I'm Angharad Ross. I'm an executive coach, trainer, consultant, and today I'm going to talk about career crossroads, which is a really important area because we all face them at some point. And the idea today really is just to get you thinking a little bit differently about your situation. So I've got what I do with my clients. I've got some client stories to share, and I've also obviously got a little plug for what I do at the end. But there'll be a Q&A. Please do drop questions into the Q&A as we go along, and I'll address them and come to them as I can. So hopefully that Q&A has been opened. Someone shared here, following an organisation change. I've lost the message already. Following the organisation change, considering what I should do next. That's a really, really great opportunity. Often when we go through a reorg, our jobs are not quite what they were before, even if the job title is the same, or maybe it's not even the same organisation we joined. So there's almost like a cultural fit question that sometimes happens. And career progression opportunities that may have been there before may have changed, and that may or may not suit us. And it's a really good opportunity to step back and say, what does this mean for me? And how can I maybe think of it a little bit differently about how I'm going to move forwards from here? And as we change in our lives and as we get older, things do change in terms of what we want from our careers. So it's a good opportunity to focus on that. So welcome. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I've got some slides to share with you. Right, so today I've mentioned we're going to cover career crossroads. We're going to talk about why career crossroads can feel difficult, where people typically get stuck, what actually helps to move you forwards from these moments, and then actually specifically how you can move forwards right now. So there's a reason why our brains just don't like career crossroads. So in our brain, there's a part called the amygdala, and it's the kind of fight or flight nervous center bit. It's described as the Velcro for negative experiences and the Teflon or non-stick for positive experiences. And that's because it holds on to things that it wants to help make us safe. And it's the bit of our brains that if there's a rustle in the bushes, our brain immediately will go lion, just in case it is, because it wants us to be prepared to run if it is. And if it ends up being a mouse, great. And then we forget that it was a mouse. Next time, we assume it's a lion again, always there to make us feel safe. And that part of the brain is activated both in physical fight or flight situations, like the lion in the bushes. It's also there to respond in the same way to social situations, because back in the day, and even now, being part of our tribe is also very important for survival. And therefore, when faced with conflict or difficult social situations, that same fear, that same fight or flight can come into play, and that assumption that it's a lion or a bad thing. And that's why change feels risky, because the brain doesn't know what's happening next. So it assumes the worst. It assumes it's going to be difficult or challenging. Even when something is good for us, and we know logically this is a really exciting change or a really positive change, the brain will still want us to be a bit afraid to protect ourselves and make the best of it. And uncertainty is seen as danger because it doesn't know what's coming next. So that's why our brains actually find all change, be that anticipated change, change that we've chosen, or change we haven't chosen, is really difficult. Anything that's familiar and safe saves energy, because our brain just immediately can make those connections, see the pattern. Anything where we need to create something new, a new neural pathway, a new way of doing things, a new routine, it requires a lot of effort from our brain. And that's why when we go through a great training course, we're completely exhausted afterwards, because you're genuinely actually burning more calories. And that's why we do snacks and things during training, to feed that brain, to make sure that you're fueled well for the learning that you're going to do. So it's totally normal to feel a bit unsettled, afraid, even if something feels really positive, and as though it's a big effort, because it is. A lot of people struggle with career crossroads because they spend a long time trying to figure it out on their own. It's funny that And I think it's particularly in the British culture, we don't tend to talk about this stuff openly at work. We don't tend to socialize our careers an awful lot. And people sort of feel like they have to work it through on their own. That means they can go through circles with their thinking. And a lot of people come to me saying, I'm fed up of thinking around the same thing over and over again. Part of the brain that is looking for those patterns is what also makes us go and seek advice from as many people as possible. Even if it's not something you typically do in these moments of decisions, we actually reach out to many more people. And everybody wants to help, but you'll only get their experiences or what they think you should do. People always like to go to solution mode, but it might not actually fit your situation. Or it might actually be that you just need to offload a little bit and you don't really want to solve, you just want to help think it through. A lot of time we don't have the space to think openly and objectively because we've got all these biases from our managers or our partners or our families or our friends. And instead, we kind of almost wait for somebody to kind of tell us what to do or for something to work its way out, instead of actually grabbing it with both hands and creating the opportunities we want. So who am I? If you don't know me, I can see some people on the call do. Hello. I've got first-hand experience. I've got over 16 years of leadership experience in big corporates like Johnson & Johnson. And in those 16-ish years, more now, I had over 15 work transitions. Some of them bigger than others. And I faced several major career crossroads myself. So I know what it's like. And now as a qualified coach, I try and help people do that more easily, quicker, and with a lot more clarity than I had when I faced those major career crossroads. So essentially, I help you do it better than I did. And I'm not your stereotypical coach. I don't have an HR background. If you're into personality preferencing, I'm a very blue, which means I'm very logical, very structured. I'm also quite red, quite direct. So that means a quite practical, quite an action focused coach, helping you find what's right for you. So why is it important to focus on career crossroads? Well, there's such a great opportunity to shape the next phases of your career, as somebody's already mentioned in the chat. Oops. So if you can get this right, it creates momentum and direction determined by you, nobody else. But if you don't grab hold of it and make this yours and take control of the opportunity, it can cost you time, energy, it can knock your confidence, and sometimes send you off on a path that actually isn't yours. When I look back, large parts of my career were a path that wasn't actually mine because I kind of let it happen. And it's interesting that when I was advertising this webinar, somebody I know who is a self-employed artist said, oh, I've never really faced a career crossroads. I've just sort of let things happen in my career. Now, if you're happy ending up anywhere or kind of doing whatever, fine. But if you want something in particular from your career or your lifestyle, then you have to make it happen for yourself. So let's not miss the boat. Don't get stuck. Don't drift into the wrong role. Don't repeat the same patterns. Sometimes we look back at our careers and go, oh yeah, I've done that again. And don't miss this wonderful opportunity to reset properly. Even if maybe you're at a career crossroads that initially feels not so positive, it can be an opportunity, and we've just got to find it. So how do we move forwards with career crossroads? This is the process that I work through with my clients. Firstly, understanding yourself. Secondly, define what it is you actually want, and also importantly, what you don't want. This is about making deliberate choices. Next is direction, actually putting together a plan to get there. And underneath all of that is the right kind of support to achieve it. I'm going to take you through each of these now step by step. So firstly, understand yourself. I thought when I left corporate, I completely understood myself. And then when someone asked me what my values were, I couldn't tell them. I kind of knew, but I couldn't really articulate them. And I also didn't really know which of those values were mine and which ones are the ones I'd sort of absorbed from my organization from being there so long. So the first step is get to know yourself. And there are three core elements of that. The first is mindset, then values, and strengths. So starting with mindset, Loads of people lack confidence and self-belief to make the best of an opportunity of a crossroad. They get imposter feelings. Oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't make good decisions. These stories we tell ourselves that often aren't true. We play it safe because our brain wants that familiarity, doesn't it? It doesn't want to have to make a change because that's scary and requires energy. And then these people get stuck. But the right mindset helps you think clearly, challenge your own assumptions, and move forwards in a really positive, deliberate way that's right just for you. So for any work transition and at any crossroads, you need to understand your own thinking and feelings. What are those stories you're telling yourself? What feelings are they conjuring up within you? Challenge some of those limiting beliefs. I can't do it. I might make the wrong decision. Really? Is that true? It's certainly not helpful. So it's really important to build a much more helpful mindset. What are the stories you need to be telling yourself to be able to take this as a great opportunity? So what does this mean in practice? It means spotting unhelpful patterns of thought, questioning our own assumptions, some of them often really deep-seated in terms of what success looks like, what work means to us, who we are, and build our confidence. Values is the next one. So values are essentially the core of what is most important to us. I did this work when I left corporate, and I have my values now up on my wall. Mine are freedom, variety, community, and building something. And those are things that absolutely have to be met in my life for me to be satisfied and happy. Not just my career, but obviously very much the career feeds into that. You've got to shape what feels right or wrong in those. I know with a client, we've got to the final words when they're like, yeah, that's totally me. But often people's values are unclear or outdated. Some people say, oh, I did this work years ago, but I'm not the same person anymore. But without clear defined values, how on earth can you make any proper decisions? These are like your North Star of you as a human being. You've got nothing to kind of use as a criteria to make a good decision. So decisions don't always feel completely certain, and it can be easy to choose the wrong fit. Are you following someone else's idea of success, or what you think you should be doing, or what you wanted 20 years ago? So what you need to do with values is identify and define them. Sounds easy. It's not that easy. Make them actually practical. So defining them and then saying, okay, but what does that look like in real life? And then start using them. I find mine so helpful up on my wall. As a self-employed person, I've got the freedom to pick so many things, and someone comes to me with an opportunity and I get really enthusiastic, and then I have to go, well, hang on a second. How is this helping me live my values? And if it's not the right opportunity for me, even if it sounds whizzy or exciting or pays me a lot of money. That's often the dangerous one. So actually practically starting to use them as a decision criteria, they're so, so valuable. And then you can start applying them to options and use them to decide. You can compare options against the same criteria. It's so useful. Next is strengths. So when you understand your own strengths, there's a huge amount of research that shows you are significantly more likely to be more confident in yourself when you know your strengths and apply them, and you're more likely to be successful. A lot of people kind of know their strengths, but not always. A lot of people, because of that Velcro for negativity in the brain, always tell me what they're not good at, and are not very comfortable saying what they are good at. And in every decision we make, yes, we need to have elements that challenge us because that's how we learn and grow. And that's the fun bit of doing something new. But we also need enough of our strengths to help keep us resilient, positive, and feel like we're doing a good job. It's easy to lose sight of them or even use them in the wrong place. But if we do use them, we can build confidence, improve our performance, and it just feels like the right fit. So you have to firstly identify your strengths, and I use a whizzy tool online that very quickly gets to strengths. And then it's like, okay, well, how do they show up in my current work? What do I want to keep and what don't I want to keep? And how do they complement your values? So someone I worked with defined fun as a value for them, and they were super fun to work with. It was definitely very much a good word for them. And then humor came up as a value, as a strength for them. And of course, that fits really nicely. So thinking about what needs to be true in order for me to get my values, well, using and tapping into my strength of humour, keeping the atmosphere light and fun and interesting for people. Then you have to use them deliberately. Well, yes, I know I'm strong at humour. I know a sense of fun is a really positive differentiator for me. How am I going to make that show up more in what I want to do next? So you have to be able to, just like your values, articulate them clearly and then start to look for those strengths when you're looking at job descriptions, roles, and even cultures, and then just using them to actually start making a positive decision. So I wanted to share Jane's story. Jane, anonymized client here. So she came to me as she was a senior leader. She'd actually sold a business a few years ago and then gone back into bigger businesses and kind of board roles. And she'd had 2 consecutive roles that just really didn't fit very well with her. And she was really frustrated. She was like, I keep getting into these work environments that are just really unhealthy for me. I'm not enjoying the people I'm working with, despite it all sounding really great at the beginning. What am I doing wrong? I cannot afford for this to happen a third time. She just kept getting this friction with the culture and the managers. So we went right back to the beginning. We went back to her values because she couldn't articulate them. She started to see patterns of when she'd been happy in her career and how those values were being met, and when she'd been unhappy in the last 2 roles and where those values were being really compromised and who was compromising those values. And actually, really quickly, between a couple of sessions, I then met with her next, and she was like, oh, I've got a new role. And I've used my values and I've used my strengths and I've mapped them against it. And this feels like absolutely the right fit. And I can see that I'm not doing what I was doing before. I've asked the right kinds of questions. I've really challenged them on this kind of thing and this kind of thing to test at this stage now as best I can whether this role, this culture, these people are going to help me deliver against my values in my life and my career. So we've done understand, that's understand yourself. The next one is define. So there are 3 essential elements for defining your career. The first one is outcomes, being really clear. I hate to sound like worky now, but there's SMART objectives for a reason. They actually work really well. How often do you write SMARTs for your own life? I try and do it every new year, and about half of them go out the window by this point. But it's really clear to know what you're trying to get out of it. What's the criteria you're looking to say what success looks like against those outcomes? And trade-offs. A lot of people don't like the trade-off bit, but it is essential. Outcomes. A lot of people come to me and say what they don't want. And I was the same when I left corporate. I was bored. I didn't want to go through another year of sales cycle. I felt like I was being stretched and challenged in the wrong ways. But I couldn't tell you what I did want. And that took quite a lot of work and time. And you've got to be clear on, well, what is it that I want out of it? What does I want this to look like in 5 years? What do I want to have achieved? What does success look like for me? And then it starts to make decisions easier, because is that going to help me or not? So you've got to decide what you want next. What does success look like? And actually, I challenge people a lot on these vague ideas. They'll say things like, I want more enjoyment, or I want something more meaningful. The word meaningful comes up a lot, and you'd be surprised at how different meaningful is for each individual person. So you've got to make it specific, make the outcome specific, and then you have to commit to it. You have to really back yourself. This is what I'm going for. And then you sort of start defining what a criteria is for that. So this is not just about what you do, but how you do it. What kind of a leader do you want to be? How do you want to be living your values? How do you want to be feeling? But without having a specific criteria against your objective, it's just a dream. It's just something on paper, and it doesn't actually fit with your life. So at this point, with my clients, we're often talking about some actually really boring practical stuff, like, how far are you willing to commute? Do you have family commitments or caring responsibilities that have to work around this? This is kind of the boring reality stuff that actually we have to start shaping what we want and those outcomes around our actual lives. So you've got to connect those values work that you've done, your strengths, what you want out of it and what matters day to day and your life, including things like lifestyle, people, pace, travel, and then set those clear filters for what you are willing to do and not willing to do. And then again, apply this to options and sense check the fit. So we're now starting to build a multi-dimensional decision criteria for what we want out of our careers. Trade-offs. This is, as I said, the bit that people don't like. Because with every choice, there has to be a trade-off. And people don't like making trade-offs because trade-offs is closing a door. And that feels scary because we think the door will never open again. And that's rarely true. And even if that door is locked, sometimes you can get back around it through another route, can't you? But if we don't actually make trade-offs, we're not making a choice at all. And that can lead to unrealistic expectations, regrets. I've even seen people almost lose a role because they're not willing to actually say no to one thing and yes to another. Because saying yes to something always means no to something else. So when I said yes to self-employment, I had to say no to something my identity had been tied up with for 16, 17 years. I was a salesperson. I was a employee of this great company. I had the job title. I worked like this. My friends all worked in a similar thing. And that identity had to be kind of killed off in a way to make room for the new one. So you have to understand how you feel about the trade-offs, really exploring the feelings, what it's triggering. Sometimes we have to look deep on these, prioritize them. So which are the ones that are actually going to have an impact when we make a choice and which ones are just noise? And be clear on where you're willing to compromise and where you're not. And that helps you weigh those options properly, be honest with yourself, and again, choose confidently. Because when you've done all the other work around values and strengths and what needs to be true in terms of practical criteria for your life and what you want out of your career, and you say, I'm choosing this, and that means I cannot also possibly do this, there's this freedom and this lightness that comes with that. My husband and I decided not to have children, and we've been umming and ahhing about it for years, and we always assumed we would. And it just, the closer and closer it got to, okay, well, you know, we actually need to start thinking about this now, the more it was just not what we wanted for our lives. And for gosh, 2 years back and forth and not really making a decision and sat on the fence. And then someone said something really interesting to me. They said, if you're sat on the fence about this, then you really must consider not doing it, because you have to be 110% committed if you're going to bring someone into the world and you're going to commit to raising them for 18 years. And that really had an aha moment for me. I'm like, yeah, because it means I don't want it enough. And when we actually chose to be child free, I felt so much lighter because I'd made a decision that was right for me. And it wasn't going around my head anymore around, are we going to, are we not going to? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for my life? What does it mean for our home? What does it mean for our future? And I felt so relieved to have made a really authentic decision for me, even though it went against what society, my family, etc. were saying. And it was a scary trade-off. And it's one we have to keep revisiting because, you know, with every decision, you're sometimes like, have I made the right decision? Am I going to regret this later? You never know. You have to go with what you think is right for you based on all the work we've just talked about, be that a decision like that or a decision in your career, and commit to it. Doesn't mean you can't change your mind, of course. I mean, I'm probably past being able to change my mind now, but it's about saying, I'm going to make a choice and I'm going to live a life that's like that, or live a career that's like that. I hope that makes sense. So I wanted to talk about Chris, anonymized client. Chris finally made a choice. He was originally from Germany, working in the UK. And he had a choice between two roles. He could go back to Germany into a really senior role, or stay here and move sideways. A super driven person, felt ready to step up, but young kids, and had been in the UK enough that citizenship was kind of on the cards for the UK. And it was something he really thought he wanted. He wanted for himself, for his family. But he was super procrastinator when it came to decisions. He didn't like closing doors. And we wrestled with this for ages. So this job was on the table and he was umming and ahhing over it, didn't really want to go back home yet, really wanted to commit to UK, but was too afraid that by committing to the UK, it was saying no to a promotion. By saying yes to a promotion, it was saying no to settling in the UK longer term. So he left the organisation hanging, and they were chasing him, and that's never great, is it? But we went and examined his fear of making that decision and what was actually really important to him. He ended up staying in the UK and wanting to prioritise citizenship and keeping his family where they were. And you know, it was really funny. A year later, or not even a year later, 6 months later, he got a promotion operating out of the UK internationally. So in the end, he was able to do both. But he prioritised, he knew exactly what was most important to him at that moment in time and how that shaped his career. But we had to go deep on some feelings here because it felt really scary for him. And this was a pattern of behaviour for him long term, not just in this moment. And so hopefully, you know, we've not fixed this for him, but certainly helped him deal with it a lot better. And he's definitely making more choices now than ever before. So we talked about understand, define. I'm now going to talk about direction. This is all about inaction and momentum, because we can do all this thinking, but that's no good if we get stuck in the thinking or the ideas and we're not actually going to speed ourselves up. If we're afraid to actually make those decisions, a little bit like my fake client there, well, real client, but fake name, Chris, slowing you down. But we know if we have that positive momentum moving forward, we build confidence, it moves you forward much faster, and it keeps you going when things get tough, because it will get tough. And we all challenge our own decisions and question things. And sometimes that leads to making new decisions, absolutely fine. And sometimes we go, no, I'm going to anchor down and this is the decision I've made. So what do you need to do for action and momentum? Actual practical next steps. You do the thinking well, you've got your criteria, you know what you need to do. And you can test your thinking. So when I left corporate, I got approached by a recruiter for a role that was a bit different from what I'd been doing in a different company. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let's test the water. I'll go for this. And I got quite far down the line and something just did not feel right. And it was a good test of my thinking because it was enabling me to think, is it corporate that's the problem? Is it sales that's the problem? Is it the industry that's the problem? And actually, it was a kind of bits of combination of all of those for me at that moment in time. Doesn't mean I won't go back, just meant at that moment in time, it wasn't right for me. So it was a brilliant test of my thinking. And sometimes we need to run these little experiments. I mean, that was quite a big experiment. But what ways can we test our thinking? And then adjust as you go. It's okay to change your mind. I used to tell my team in terms of their career, you know, use it like a compass. You head off in a certain direction, but if you need to adjust your course and reroute around something, it's absolutely fine. But if you have no direction because you know things will change, you'll float. So definitely be clear on next steps, definitely challenge your own thinking, but also have that accountability to follow through. What things do you need in place to make sure you actually take the time and effort to do those actions, especially if it means overcoming some fears to do so? So I'm going to share Liz's story with you now about how she moved from frustration and being unclear to an action plan. So for her, she was later in her career. She was super frustrated in her current role. The CEO didn't align with her ways of working. And she was just starting to think, I don't actually need to be earning what I'm earning. I'm really frustrated. I'm fed up. I feel like I can't be myself. I can't do things the way I need to. So she came to me because she was like, is this actually an opportunity to pivot industries now? She'd always wanted to work in the charity sector and she'd applied for a few roles, but she didn't actually know what she wanted. So again, we went back to values, strengths, life must-haves, explored what the word meaningful meant to her. She was a great example of, I want something more meaningful, but what does that mean? We explored whether charity sector was the only option for getting something more meaningful for her. And we put together a plan to optimize her time and energy so that she looked past a lot of roles that just wouldn't suit her. If anyone's ever had their colours done, you know, where you go to these people that put colour swatches against your skin and tell you what colours suit you and don't, it's kind of like that. When you know what colours suit you, you can go, well, don't even look at half the shop. It means clothes shopping is a lot quicker. I highly recommend it. So you could just park a load of roles that just weren't going to be right for her. And she actually put together a really solid plan, left her role way earlier than she was expecting, and she's now actioning that. And interestingly, she thinks she might have found something that is not a charity, it's actually a startup, but it ticks all of the boxes of what meaningful actually means to her. So it's really interesting that she thought she wanted one thing, but actually through exploration, she had more options than she really realized. So that's understand, define, direction. I'm now going to touch on the support. So a lot of people lack the support necessary to handle career crossroads well. So you've seen what's involved in it. That's quite tough to do on your own. But having the right support removes that feeling of isolation, provides reassurance, helps maintain emotional balance. And I think I need to add on to here as well that it gives you that accountability to actually crack on and do the work required to understand yourself better and have a proper plan to go and make the most of your career. There are two types of support I talk about. The first one is personal support, and the second is external support. So what do I mean by these? So personal support. These are friends, families, members, mentors. Friends and family are so helpful in making decisions, even if they know nothing about your industry, your career, your work. Just sharing this stuff and knowing you have that unconditional support is really helpful. But beware. They often look at transitions much more from a kind of personal or happiness perspective, which is great. And that perspective absolutely needs to be considered, which is why we do that as part of the strengths in particular. But often they just want you to be happy, and they won't always give you those home truths. A mentor can often share their own perspective. This is how I did it. This is what happened to me when I went through that experience. And it's very personal. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's values are different. Strengths are different. Combination of those two things are different. So it's really important to have that support. I'm not saying don't, just be aware of the kind of caveats that need to come with it. And so that support is actually rarely enough on its own. So what do I mean by external support? Something like coaching with me, because it gives you the objectivity and the confidentiality. And these are thinking game changers. There is no judgment with coaching with me. No idea is off the table. Nothing that you say will be something I haven't heard before or something that surprises me. And that confidentiality means it's going nowhere. You can say that you think your CEO is unhinged without any repercussions. And it just sometimes helps you move that thinking forward in a way that you're not able to do if you're worried about people's biases or where this information might go. That's why working one-to-one with an experienced, qualified and accredited coach helps you challenge that thinking, find your new perspectives, and keep yourself on track for what you actually want to achieve. There are a lot of cowboys out there in the coaching world, so you need experience, qualifications and accreditations with a professional body, which I have as well, by the way, plug, plug, plug. So how do you get the support that you need? So that personal support, share your feelings with selected friends and family. We've all got a couple of people in our friendship group or our family that we know are just going to suck the life out of an idea. Don't speak to them. Be mindful of who you spend your time with and who you listen to, because when our brain is in that kind of amygdala overdrive, when we're trying to find patterns that aren't yet there and we're dealing with uncertainty, we absorb a lot more of what's around us. So we have to be really careful that we're putting ourselves in a position where we're having open minds and we're listening to different options and perspectives. And there's something a lot of people don't bother doing. They might do it with a professional mentor, but they don't often do it with friends and family, is set an objective for every interaction. Like, my cousin has always been really adventurous. I'd love to get her perspective on this. So for her, I'm going to try and understand, I don't know, what freedom could look like in this role. I don't know, I'm just talking. But do you know what I mean? You need to kind of have an idea of why are you talking to that particular person, even if it's your partner or a parent. For the external support, you need to identify a coach who's experienced in change transitions. Done, you're here. Check they're qualified in coaching and accredited. Done, you're here. Book a complimentary discovery call and prepare questions. So I have a 45 minutes, which is actually quite a long time, but really allows you to explore properly what's on your mind. A 45-minute free call, but prepare for it. What do you want to explore? What do you want to test? And it's so important you feel that you can talk to somebody. There's research that shows that 40% of any therapeutic outcomes, so what they mean by that is like coaching or therapy, something like that, is down to the relationship you build with your coach or therapist. Because then you're able to open up and really have a proper conversation, and it's kind of no holds barred, no judgment, all that good stuff. So, zooming out, my top tips for navigating career crossroads are: do that foundational thinking. If there are gaps in that or it's not being done thoroughly, you can end up accidentally going in the wrong directions. Be mindful of who you talk to and why you're talking to them. And get the support that you need to do this well. Career crossroads are not easy. Definitely. We talked about how the brain makes it extra difficult for us, how we get stuck in ways of thinking or we try and do it alone. And it takes tons of energy, proactivity, and loads of support to get it right. But you've already taken a really positive step by being here today and learning more. So one-to-one coaching with me is a solution that includes the 4 things that are most missing when people are trying to navigate a career crossroads. It's that confidentiality and objectivity, challenging of thoughts, assumptions, feelings, beliefs, dedicated time to think. This is one that people come to often saying, I just haven't even had a chance to think about it properly. And digging deep. Sometimes we have to face into some stuff. Why is it that Chris really struggled to close a door in order to open another one? How do we get past some of that stuff so we can actually start making decisions? I work with people at the beginning a bit more intensely. We do weekly, and then we spread it out to sort of every other week and further out, depending on what experiments or thinking needs to be done between. Accountability, because these sessions are booked in. Rarely do people move them because they're like, no, I have to do this. I have to do this thinking. I give people information on how to prepare for coaching. If you've never been in, never had coaching before, sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming. So I give a bit of a guide. And there's 100% autonomy. So I've shared with you a framework and a structure that I tend to work with people on when it comes to career crossroads, but it's 100% down to you. If you need us to go in a completely different direction, that's where we go. I'm not going to say, oh, this is session 2, and today we will talk about this. There's a bit of a flow and a pattern and those building blocks that I recommend that you do, but sometimes we might need to divert before we can come back, and that's totally okay. I don't take notes. I don't set homework unless you asked for it. Sometimes, particularly some of my neurodivergent clients like to record sessions or have a note taker or whatever, absolutely fine. But I'm not going to be taking notes because it means then I'm not listening to you properly, I'm not doing the work that we need to do. So it's high levels of autonomy when working with me. So a few things that my clients have said that have been in these situations: and Howard listens deeply, gets to the heart of things quickly, challenges my assumptions. She's brought clarity. Changing industries later in my career felt like a daunting task. Challenged my existing assumptions. A tangible action plan turned a complex career pivot into a series of manageable strategic steps. Truly cared about my professional goals and personal growth. An incredible ability to ask the right questions. Boosting my confidence. She has a genuine passion for helping others succeed, bring invaluable insights, and push you to grow while offering unwavering encouragement. It always feels cheesy reading these things out, but I think it's important you see what people have been experiencing. So how does it work? You book a free online context call via my website, so you can scan this QR code, or it's www.risecmc.uk. You then, based on our conversation, get a tailored quote specific to you, your situation, based on my experience. And then you book your first online session and off we go. So I have a booking link and you can book around my availability when it's convenient for you. And then we get to work. So bonus for you for joining my webinar today: if you have a discovery call with me, a chemistry call, and it goes well and we work together, mention that you came to this and you get a free 1-hour accountability session 6 months after completing your coaching program. So mention that in your complimentary discovery call and I'll put it into your quote. And that means we'll finish our work together, but then in 6 months' time, you can have another call with me. And then that is sometimes very motivating for people to keep the good work going. Oh, and that's worth 275. I forgot that build. It's valuable. My current availability is tight and it's about to get a bit tighter. So I've only got 2 slots left to start working with me in the next month. So if you are interested, please do book in sooner rather than later. And I've got a holiday in August as well. So if you are interested, and it's absolutely no obligation at all, please do book a call with me. And I'd be really interested to hear what's on your mind and what's going on for you specifically. And now I'm going to close this and stop sharing and go to Q&A. So if there's anything on your mind, please do share it in the Q&A or the chat. I will try and keep an eye on both now. No pressure. I know sometimes these things are quite personal. Book a call and we can have a private conversation. But if there's anything on your mind now or anything you want me to elaborate on or ask a question on, please go for it. Give you a minute to have a little think. So somebody said it was interesting how you said meaningful meant different things to different people. Can you share some more examples of how it's different for different people? Yeah, totally. That's a really good one. So meaningful in the case of the client story I mentioned, she wanted to be involved in a company that was doing something to make the world a better place. And then we had to explore, well, what does a better place mean? What kind of areas? And for her, that ultimately meant a sustainability focused better place. But it needed to be sustainability linked to people outcomes. So she ended up being quite interested in companies that were maybe looking at water solutions in developing countries. And we got there because she was like, I need to feel like I can see something tangible as a meaningful outcome for a human being at the end of it. And then we explored, well, does she want to go and do that directly? So is this something where she wants to be on the ground doing well stuff in Africa? And she was like, no, I actually don't want to be on the front line of doing it. I want to feel like I'm supporting the amazing people that are doing that kind of work. So we ended up going on this kind of really interesting journey because she was like, I want to work with charities. And then we were like, well, based on what you've just defined as meaningful, charities are not the only way that you can do that kind of work. And that's why she's actually ended up being quite interested now in a startup. So it's a profit-making business, not a charity, but it excites her for the right reasons and ticks what meaningful means to her. Had other people come and say that meaningful means making a difference to everyday lives. And that person actually ended up taking a coaching route themselves. They want to do work where they can tangibly walk away from every interaction thinking I made a difference in that moment. So that was more of a, I need to feel like I've directly made a change to somebody else. And I almost need it to be that instant gratification of that. I need to see it. I need to feel like I've done an hour and I walk away and I'm like, yeah, made a difference to that person. For me, when I talk about building as one of my values, and that is something meaning, it has, I think that is meaningful to build something. That's my definition, I suppose, of doing something more meaningful. When I left corporate, I kind of need to feel like the work that I do makes the world a better place than it was before. And interestingly for me, probably won't surprise you knowing I'm like very blue and logical and structured, that for me almost means systems and processes are set up, that things are easier, more efficient for people to do whatever they are doing better. That's why I enjoy consultancy. And I see my coaching work in that sense, helping people think differently, put in place thinking processes for themselves, learning how to challenge their own assumptions. I like people to feel after coaching with me that they've gained some new thinking skills and some new thinking muscles for themselves. So that's 3 examples of 3 different people wanted to do meaningful work, but that it means different things to them. I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour as to how different people can interpret meaningful, even within doing the same job. Very helpful, thank you. You're welcome. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'll check the Q&A as well as the chat. Nothing in the Q&A. Let me know if you've got any final questions. Otherwise, I'll give it one more minute and we will wrap up. But you know where I am. If you'd like to talk more, or if you've got any questions, send me a message, send me an email, keep in touch on LinkedIn. You know where I am. Doesn't look like any further questions, in which case I wish you all a lovely weekend. I hope you get to enjoy the sunshine and don't swelter too much. And whatever is on your mind when it comes to a career crossroads, I wish you all the best with it, whether we work together or not. So I hope today's been really useful. Excellent session. I found it really insightful. You are welcome. I'm glad you found it helpful. Kind of emptied my brain on career crossroads on Tool today. You're welcome. All the best with it. You know where I am. Take care, everybody. Thank you for coming and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.